Hello.
What's up, Jake?
What's up, Josh?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about heel hooks, mostly because last night me and a buddy of mine, Keston, he's like getting a lot better at the leg entanglements and go for heel hooks, but I kept slipping out of them. And I have no hair, obviously, so I'm like super slippery. And we were just wondering, like, what's happening? It can't just be because you're like slippery and sweaty. And so after class, we were messing around and we were trying to figure out like what allows people to slip out versus what's like a really good bite where you can start breaking.
Mm,
And so one of the variables we were seeing is like when my leg was straight, it seemed like a lot easier for me to slip out of heel hooks in general. So we talked to one of the brown belts, Calvin, and he was talking about how when he sets up for a heel hook, instead of being on your elbow, he drops down to his shoulder and like tries to get his elbow down to his hip and like really tighten everything up before beginning the break.
mm,
And I think it showed me that I was doing them all wrong. Like I thought it was like this upper body rotation versus like really crunching in and getting it everything tight before starting the break. So I guess my question is maybe more clarity around what that like quote unquote precursor is before you can start to actually break. Seems like a hard skill to practice because a lot of people just tap early, in the gym. So it's hard to get that like true look and maybe a little risky to practice this skill. So yeah, it also reminded me of something previously. I think I saw one of your videos of like belly down ankle locks. So I was like, huh, are all these like foot locks, ankle lock, heel hooks, whatever, all like going into the ground, belly down, like facing downwards into using the ground to start the break? So yeah, kind of a big question, but
mm. Yeah, let's chop it up. So I guess the first part is like how to get a good catch on the heel. And then the second part might be helpful to talk about like whether you should be on your elbow, your shoulder type of thing when applying the finish. So I just to preface this, there's a lot of opinions on the matter, and I'll just kind of give you, I guess, what my current thoughts are on it now. Um, but generally, like when you're going for a heel hook, you don't want the foot to be touching you. You want it to be like floating in the air. So if their foot is like really close to your ribs and you're trying to get their heel, it's probably going to be easier for them to slip out of it. Whereas if it's floating, you can generally get a better catch on it and it's going to lead to a much harder grip for them to slip out of. So at least my general rule of thumb these days is if their foot is like close to my rib cage, I'm looking to take an Achilles grip and probably threaten like a straight ankle lock. And if their foot is more like floating, this might be a time to attack a heel hook. And then as far as like your elbow or shoulder type thing, um, the thing I heard on this was like basically like if you're on your elbow, you were talking about how when you're on your elbow, you like can get a lot of like rotational type pressure. And basically, I think what this comes down to is if you're on your elbow, you can get a lot of braking pressure with your upper body, but it's hard for you to incorporate your lower body into the brake. Whereas if you fall to your shoulder, now it's much easier for you to start incorporating your lower body into the brake, but now it becomes much harder for you to use your upper body. So if you're all the way on your shoulder, it's basically all lower body, no upper body. And if you're on your elbow, it's all upper body, no lower body. So the general advice is to be somewhere in between your shoulder and your elbow. And this allows you to use your upper body and lower body together to get the break. So you'll see a lot of people like on their like tricep type thing where their shoulders off the mat and they're not like posted on their elbow kind of thing. And this allows you to like get more rotation because you're not on your shoulder. That can be hard to rotate when there's weight on your shoulder. Um, and yeah, it also allows you to incorporate your lower body because you're not like basing on your elbow. So this is, I think, the general advice is to be somewhere in between your elbow and your shoulder.
okay. For the if we start with ankle locks, when you yeah, if their foot is kind of close to your body, you said you typically like to go for the Achilles grip. From there, the Achilles grip seems pretty strong. in terms of maintaining the connection. From there, do you always go belly down to go for the break?
No. Yeah. It kind of depends on what their reaction is. I generally try to go like let's just use a position so we can get some like ideas in our head. So if we're attacking from like outside ashi with both our feet on the outside, and it's going to be like the legs straight across our body, right? So if we're on our outside hip, um, I think just kind of again building off the idea of like straight ankle and heel hooks together. If we're on our outside hip and we start digging for a heel hook, if we miss it, they're going to have the opportunity to take our back potentially because we have to kind of turn our back to them to chase the heel hook, and we're giving them a lot of back exposure. So at least what I've tried to do these days is if I'm on my outside hip, I really focus on keeping the Achilles grip and threatening a straight ankle lock. And if I'm going for a heel hook, it's kind of like a half-hearted heel hook to get them to like point their toes a bit to like slip their heel, and this allows you to get a stronger straight ankle lock.
Mm,
So if you're on your outside hip, I generally try and focus more on the Achilles grip and not chase a heel hook as more. But if you turn onto your inside hip, this allows you to get their foot floating a bit more, which gives a better catch on the heel. Um, and it makes it much harder for them to take your back. So I've at least found it to be better to play the dilemma between like heel exposure and straight ankle lock when you're not turning like you could still turn belly down by going to your inside hip, but you can I think more easily turn belly down by going to your outside hip. So like initially I've really been trying to force like the inside hip action and try and unweight their foot, you know, to make heel hooks or straight ankles stronger. And depending on like where their foot is in relation to my ribs would be the attack that I'm going to go for.
okay, wait, so which one's the inside hip and which one's the outside hip again? Is it like your
So
top if their foot is like on top, like away from the ground versus on the ground?
so if you're in outside ashi, with your feet like on the outside, we'll say I'm attacking their left leg. So my Achilles grip is with my right arm. If I turned onto my left hip, that's the hip that's like basically like in between their legs. So this would be like your inside hip.
Mhm.
And then if you turn on to your outside hip, this would be my right hip, which is basically the same hip that I have the foot on.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're kind of like going away from them as
Okay.
opposed to towards them.
Gotcha.
Is I guess the terminology I guess you would use for the hip. You
Okay.
know,
Okay.
yeah,
Make okay, I think that makes sense. It's a little bit hard to picture. Wait, outside Aussie is like if you
yeah,
entered single leg. Yeah, maybe we can find a
yeah. I
find a
gotcha.
screen video. But outside Aussie, wait, is that when you go to single leg X, but then you just throw that inside leg to the outside?
Yeah, here let me show you.
Okay, cool.
So so right now he's in outside ashi, like both his feet are on his, not the best example, but he's in outside ashi on his outside hip.
Mhm.
Because yeah. And then let's see if we can find an inside hip. Two. So this is outside hip.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
This is inside hip.
Yeah, yeah.
And you see how it's much harder for them to put their foot on the mat,
Mhm.
and their foot is now like floating in the air.
Yeah.
So like if they're trying to kick their leg through a bit more,
Mhm.
then their foot would be farther away from your ribs. And this might be a good time to attack a heel hook. And by going for a heel hook when you're on your inside hip, you don't have to turn your back to them. Whereas you can see like it works out in this scenario, right? But he's like he's spinning the leg. Let me see this example. Like if you're here, you kind of have to like turn your back to them.
Yeah.
And if he's able to slip out of this heel hook, which he doesn't, so like it obviously works, you know. I'm just
Mhm.
saying like if you want to like minimize risk, I think it's more risky to dig for the heel when you're on your outside hip because you have to turn your back.
Mhm.
Um, So yeah, if they were to escape, they could take your back.
Yeah, so, from a risk perspective, it seems like it's better to go inside. Would it be better for him to from a risk perspective, to pass that foot to the other side?
Well, then you would end up in 50-50.
Okay.
So, if you wanted to prevent the back take, then you pass the leg over. So let's see.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. Outside Ashi, Passover, and 50/50 entry hashtags. Wow.
Yeah, so you can
Very
see this
specific.
guy. So he enters, Jacob enters outside Ashi with
Mhm.
a scoop grip, and then the defender, Hunter, starts to build base, and then he passes it over to prevent the back take.
Yeah.
I think a good example of this, I don't know if it's on YouTube. Let's see. Um, yeah, this is it. Okay. So basically, if this leg was on the other side of Oliver's head,
Mhm.
you can see like right when he enters, the leg is on the like far side away from the camera
Mhm.
of Oliver's head. But he quickly passes the leg over. So basically, if the leg stayed on that same side, Joseph might be able to take his back. But because he passes the leg across his body, when Joseph tries to take his back, he can't.
Wow.
But like the 50-50 prevents this type of back take, that like wedging back take,
Mhm.
because the leg is across your body. It's hard for
Right.
them to take your back. Whereas if this leg was on the other side of Oliver's head,
Mhm.
Joseph would have a better chance of taking his back.
Whoa.
So in general, like when you enter, let's try and find an example where you enter into outside Ashi and then pass the leg over in to 50-50. So yeah, he enters, he's in outside Ashi right here
Mhm.
on his outside hip. So the leg is going straight across his body, and then he passes
I
the
see.
leg over. So now you end up in 50-50, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not the best example of like how to defend the leg entanglement. Yeah, you enter,
I
pass it over,
see.
then you end up in 50-50. Uh, hoping to find an example where the guy like legitimately tries to take his back. Yeah.
Dang, it's crazy how specific we can get in the database. Jake is looking for outside Ashi entry and then a pass into 50/50. And we're seeing quite a few examples.
Yeah. It'd probably be better if I just asked the chat to give me an example of someone passing it over to prevent the back take. But yeah. So like you can kind of see like
Mhm.
when you start to feel like you're getting, pressure, um, passing the leg over is a good way to be like, all right, I'm just gonna make sure I stay connected to the legs. But then you end up in 50-50 where like, you can attack and they can attack kind of thing.
Yeah.
So um yeah, just I guess something to keep in mind, especially when you're playing outside ashi on your outside hip, because that's when the back exposure happens. And generally, like when you enter outside ashi and you have a scoop grip, this is when like the back takes get real. Whereas if you have an Achilles grip, it kind of makes it harder for them to take your back. So this is why I was saying like when you're attacking from outside ashi and you fall to your outside hip, generally it's a good idea to manage risk by keeping an Achilles grip,
Mhm.
and threatening straight ankle lock type of attacks. Um, and then when you turn onto your inside hip, now you can kind of play them off of one another better. But like, someone like Jacob Couch does it very well from his outside hip, threatening both heel hook and an Achilles grip. So you can definitely do both, but yeah.
Yeah. I do like that general rule of thumb you mentioned earlier about like if the foot's kind of floating, it's probably a little bit easier to get heel exposure versus if it's close to you, you go for the Achilles. Let's say you've established one of those. I'm curious about that last battle. Like you've kind of established the solid Achilles grip or a solid heel exposure. And then what's that last battle like where you're trying to submit and they're just trying to escape? Yeah, it seems like a pretty specific skill that is a bit harder to practice. But yeah, I've just been slipping out a lot, and so we're trying to troubleshoot what's allowing me to versus when I do get caught.
Yeah. Um, how are you slipping out? Are you rotating? Oh,
Yeah, rotating. I'm kind of like straight. Maybe if we stick with heel hooks for now, I'm like straightening my leg and then starting to either rotate basically in the opposite direction
mhm.
of whether it's inside or outside heel hook.
Yeah. So I think part of that has to do with like the catch. Um, so if you get a good catch on their heel, it should be hard for them to like straighten their leg. So it might be due to just like the initial catch being like not the best, and then that gives you the ability to straighten your leg a bit more. Um, the other thing that I think it's like a very fine detail, and it might not necessarily be like um, make it or break it type thing. But Lachlan talks about how, like, if your forearm is like underneath their heel, as traditionally taught to finish a heel hook, this doesn't do much to like pull their leg into you. It's good for like rotating, but it doesn't stop them from like extracting their leg. So if they do pull their leg out, you're not like pulling their leg back into you. So what Lachlan talks about is if the threat is them like pulling their leg out, you can kind of like slide into more of a grip where like it's more up on your forearm and it catches their heel in a way where now when you pull it up to your chest, it's like pulling their leg back into you, which will make it hard for them to pull it out. Um, so, yeah, again, it's kind of like a minor detail on like how to grip the ankle when you're threatening a heel hook, but it could be worth maybe like playing around with.
On the topic of the catch, I think this is something we are trying to troubleshoot. What makes a good catch versus a bad catch? I felt like I was trying to like shove his like toes into my armpit almost, and then like put my elbow way behind me to get a good catch. Or is it more about when they're putting the boot on, then it's kind of like a good catch versus if they're ballerina toeing their toes, maybe that's a bad catch because the heel's like not sticking out as much. I don't know if that's
Yeah, again, this is something that it's gonna you're gonna hear a lot of different opinions
oh really?
on.
Okay.
So yeah, just to preface it.
hmm
Um, what I've been trying to do recently, like let's say you're attacking like an outside heel hook. Um, been trying to get their toes more like not in my armpit, but down by my like bicep. Um, and then trying to get it in a way where it like forces their foot into like a flex, like they put the boot on, and not keep it bent. And like a really good way that I've been trying to do this, I think it works for outside heel hooks, not necessarily for inside heel hooks, but it works when their foot is floating, and it's been very successful for me. Um, but, like, especially when you try onto your inside hip, like, basically, you put your forearm first over their toes, and then you push your forearm down, so then their toes slip into your bicep, and then your hand goes or your forearm goes over their heel.
hmm
And then you pinch like, basically, the way Danaher words it is when you catch the heel, you want your forearm aligned with their, leg, and then after you catch the heel, you want your forearm aligned with their foot. So basically, you take this like forearm frame over their foot, and then you turn your forearm in a way where your forearm aligns with their leg to catch their heel, and then you rotate your arm back to align with their foot.
Mm.
And this has been a good way for me to go about like catching a good bite on an outside heel hook.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, there's the catch, and then once you have the catch and, is your focus then on bending their leg for heel hooks, or is it on, like, connecting your hands, or I guess maybe both at the same time, and how does the bent leg versus straight leg come into this for the attacker and defender?
Yeah. Lachlan has a very good video about like the braking mechanics of this, but like if I remember correctly, basically what he talks about is your hip rotation um is much less with a bent leg. So basically what he talks about is if your leg is bent, in order to rotate, you have to lift your hip off the mat, and then this gives you the ability to rotate. But with a straight leg, you can rotate without taking your hip off the mat. So the idea would be if you bend their leg and then put some sort of wedge on top of their hip so they can't take their hip off the mat, then they can't rotate. And now you can break them. But if their leg is straight, now they can rotate without taking their hip off the mat. And now, yeah, it doesn't really control their, rotation very well, even if you control their hip. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
so wow, it seems pretty nuanced. It isn't like bent is always better or straight is always better. So there are times where people finish it off the straight if straight leg, bent leg, it just depends on how much you're limiting their rotation.
Definitely. Yeah.
Dang it. Okay. Dang, there's no like clear answers. It's
Yeah, I
very,
know.
very situational in here. Um,
Yeah.
when you were first starting to learn these braking mechanics, are there any like specific situations or games where you found yourself in a lot that helped you find success early?
When I was learning these, it was just a lot of, like, drilling, so
Mhm.
I wasn't in the game phase.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm not entirely sure. I haven't tried to teach, like, braking mechanics to people through games or anything, so, um, I don't really know,
Yeah, this
like,
one
the
seems
best way.
tricky.
Yeah. And this is a question Greg gets asked a lot,
Right.
and his answer is like, you give them the, goals of like, you know, pinning the hip and applying like force to the outside of the knee kind of thing.
Mhm.
So I don't know how effective it is. I haven't tried it myself, but that's his, answer. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It seems like in general these are a little bit like scarier to play with. Any kind of break, really. Like, oh, starting an arm bar like fully locked out, try to break, and the other person try to skate. Like, seems trickier. But it also seems like a pretty stable position where like some of the details can come out because you get to try it so many times. So yeah, I'm just trying to wonder if me and Keston wanted to work on this skill in particular. Maybe what could be a good place to start when designing a game.
yeah. Um, I was for whatever reason I was thinking about the catch on the heel
Mhm.
a bit more, and I'm gonna answer like just say this thought because it kind of came to my mind. And I don't want to forget it. Then we can go back to like designing games and trying to think if we can come up with an answer for that. But head position, I think, is like another interesting idea when it comes to getting heel exposure. So if you want an inside heel hook, like say you're attacking from cross ashi, you want your head to be on the inside of their leg. So you want to be able to like see the inside of their foot to get a heel, to get their heel. And then for outside heel hooks, it's the opposite. So you want your head like working towards the outside to get heel exposure. So yeah, focusing on like where your head is, I think is probably another important aspect of getting a good bite on the heel.
Whoa, I had not thought about that at all. Because 'cause you're cutting an angle a little bit on their leg.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, this is another thing. And then like another thing Lachlan talks about a bunch is like especially when attacking. So basically when I'm attacking an outside heel hook, I really like the forearm thing on top of their toes. I've had a lot of success with that, but it doesn't really work from an inside heel hook. So what Lachlan talks about for an inside heel hook when you're trying to get the catch is focus on like elbowing their big toe and putting like a lot of pressure on their big toe because then that flares their heel out and basically like forces them to put the boot on. It's hard for them to keep that like pointed toe when they start to get a lot of pressure on their big toe. So um, at least for me, like when I'm attacking an inside heel hook, you're trying to put a lot of pressure on their big toe, and it's very hard to do that when their foot is on the ground. So you want the foot to be floating, and you want to put some pressure on their big toe. And for an outside heel hook, I just try and get my forearm like on top of their toes. Is been what I'm like tried to focus on. And if I can get that, then I'm like, okay, I'm going to go for a heel hook. If I can't get my forearm on top, it's like I'm probably going to go back to an Achilles grip and try and threaten that straight ankle lock. Yeah,
Yeah. Uh, it seems like in terms of like starting people off in a position, maybe this is just because there was that awesome Rob Cole. I think he was at, oh, what's that called? The Globetrotters, I think it was. Yeah, the
mm,
video where he was teaching leg locks. So I'll link that as well. That's where I started playing with some of these games. I'm just gonna put a note, Rob Cole leg lock. Okay. Um, he would have people start in that cross ashi position. Um, I don't know, is that like one of the strongest places for beginners to start learning leg entanglements?
probably. Especially because your feet are on the inside. You don't necessarily like if you start them in 50-50, then you have to worry about like defense and offense, and it can kind of be a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, like Krasashi is probably a good place to start.
Okay. So yeah, maybe a good game can be starting in cross ashi where you already have the heel, and then maybe you don't have like your hands connected yet because that could be a little dangerous. They grab your other hand. I've seen Greg start in some of these games, so maybe that one could be a good one to start practicing the inside, and then from there, if you just pass it over from cross ashi to the other side, maybe you could start there for the outside heel hook.
Yeah, this is a pretty scary position.
Oh, is it?
Have you seen this? The inside ashi position,
Mm-mm.
where like it's basically like you have like a full blown reap,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah, so it's a I mean it's a great position to for the attacker, but it might be like kind of hard for the defender to
Okay.
deal with.
To start there.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if that would necessarily be the best for outside heel
Okay.
hooks. But
Where
I
would
think
you
cross
start
ashi is
for?
a good
Okay.
place to start for inside. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a cross ashi for inside, and where would you have people start for the outside if they were learning this for the first time?
Mm, maybe maybe something like you're talking about outside heel hooks.
Mhm.
Maybe something like outside ashi on your inside hip, if that makes sense.
Outside ashi on inside hip.
Yeah. So like
Is there another name for outside ashi? I think that might just be throwing me off a bit.
some people call it like double outside ashi.
Okay.
Some people call it like DOA,
Okay.
for double outside ashi.
Yeah.
Um, Greg calls it like outside entanglement.
Okay.
Um, but maybe something like this, where maybe like this person's not just like dead on the
Yeah.
bottom, but maybe they're like on their far knee, and
Uh-huh.
you have both your feet on the outside or on their hip, and you're controlling their leg like
Ah,
this.
okay.
Might be a good place
To work the outside one.
to work the outside one, yeah.
Okay,
And
cool.
then like yeah.
Okay, cool. So at least that's like two starting places that are probably pretty good to play with the inside versus the outside. Um, where would you have people start for the straight ankle?
It's a pop quiz. Jesus. Um, Probably that same position actually. The outside ashi, inside hip.
Okay.
Um, that or like butterfly ashi is probably butterfly ashi.
Mhm, mhm. Is
Yeah,
that like single leg X where you take your top leg, the one on their hip, and you pummel it inside to this
yeah,
little baby hook thing?
yeah. Um, this might be good, but it might also be better just to stick with the same position of outside ashi and then just
Play from
like
there.
they're so interchangeable. Like you could just take your foot off the hip and put it into butterfly ashi from outside ashi. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's splitting hairs. You know what that is? Leg entanglements. Um, so yeah, I think you have like the major positions, but then you have like so many different like branches that come very easily off of them. It's kind of like single leg X can like very easily lead to X guard. It can very easily lead to butterfly ashi. It can very easily lead to outside ashi. It's like yeah, like so it's basically like where to start. I don't know really. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, the leg
sorry.
entanglements gets very man, it just feels like it gets very, very complex. And so yeah, I can see how designing games for leg entanglements is just such a giant topic. Yeah, entering them, maintaining them, transitioning between them, and then which ones are better for ankle lock versus heel hook, and then there's inside versus outside heel hook, and then the risk of back exposure. So like there's so many games you could probably make by giving the defender, just defend or counterattack or try to take their back or try to stand up and now you're trying to keep them down on the ground. Like, yeah, there's a lot here.
Yeah,
So yeah, it may be even just way too early for me to think about finishing versus think about all those other skills around even just getting there. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It is. It's a pretty interesting like whole other side of jujitsu a bit.
the dark
Um,
side.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, at least recently I've been just focused on like trying to manage risk a bit from leg entanglements
Hmm.
and trying to just put myself in the best position to succeed or at least like not end up in a bad position. Um, and I think, at least from my experience, what I've been trying to do is turn onto my inside hip if the leg is straight across my body, and
Yeah.
trying to do that as often as possible.
Gotcha. Man, it was a tall task trying to tackle this topic on an episode.
Yeah, it was a lot of popcorn questions. Yeah.
Yeah. It is funny though. I guess we can wrap up with this funny anecdote that my buddy was like really enjoying the gi for a while.
Mm.
And then one of his friends who's a black belt at Legion got an injury, who's also a gi guy. And so he couldn't train for a while. So I've been like pulling him into the no gi world, and now he's fallen in love with leg locks, and now he doesn't want to go back to the gi.
Once you get a taste, it's hard to go back.
It's kind of what happened to you too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Especially like when you start studying it a lot, it's like it becomes such an integral part of your game. It's like it's how you sweep is like threatening leg locks. It's how you like do a lot of stuff. And then it's like, oh man, now I gotta just like completely disregard this whole area of study. It's hard to do to let it
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
Wait, yeah. Okay, so we were just talking about this before we started recording. Is like you started out gi training 6 days a week, went to a Craig Jones seminar, and then started doing leg locks and no gi. Did you at that time? Did you miss the gi at all? Or were you like once you learned leg locks, you were on the dark side and that was it?
I never really liked the gi, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Like once the Danaher instructionals came out, I was basically doing no gi in the gi.
Hmm.
Um, and then like I didn't even really, yeah, like I never gravitated towards the gi. Um, and yeah, I remember, yeah, well, I won't share the story actually. It's not
Okay,
I'll tell you later.
tell me after we
Yeah.
stop recording.
But yeah, basically, like I never really gravitated towards the gi, and then the leg locks were kind of like the final straw. That was
Okay,
like, yeah, I'm just gonna give this up. So it wasn't like a hard connection for me to let go of.
got it, got it. Cool. Well, yeah, we tried to explore the topic. Hopefully, this was helpful for some people. Maybe give people a starting place to start messing around with some of this particular skill of holding on to that connection and finishing from there.
Cool. Yeah,
Cool. No, I got to hear that story. So I'm gonna
it's
and
just politics. That's why I don't wanna
okay, yeah,
I
yeah,
don't wanna share it
yeah.
publicly. But
We'll
yeah,
stay away from all that.
cool.
Cool.
All
See
right,
ya.
later, Josh.